have a really fun set of lightning talks, and let's go.
So, hi everyone, I'm Marina, and I'm here again to expand a little bit more on the Thüringer methodology for my current project at the Center for the Study of Manuscript Cultures in Hamburg. As I said yesterday, I'm dealing with ancient Egyptian manuscripts, or actually written artifacts, and the main problem is that in Egyptology, just like in several other disciplines, there is always this super big divide between everything that is written on a wall, meaning like epigraphy, so-called epigraphy, and everything that is written on smaller surfaces, so-called manuscripts. However, when one looks closely, both categories have actually so much in common. So my current project looks for these visual borrowings and visual interactions across different materials and different media. And to do this, I, of course, have just started, but I have developed a pipeline, so to say, or a workflow that starts obviously with a database, collecting the data, leveraging a IIIF for comparison, including quantitative methods, and culminating at the end in a digital exhibition. I have started collecting various material, obviously, since I am just a researcher and not an institution or a billionaire. I may have so to say, photos from my fieldwork, but all the other photos of objects and manuscripts and wooden boxes, as in this case, I need to outsource to various collections. So I'm sort of looking around, mostly through the website, the open collections of the major Egyptological collections, so the Met, the BM, Turin. But this is already one of the hurdles because, for example, not all of them have their IIIF manifest available, the BM notoriously not, and the Turin Museum doesn't even have a IIIF on its website. So basically, I am collecting the images and then transforming them into IIIF images. Here we have a really nice example. Basically, it's a wooden box which employs on the lid a pattern that is typically found on tomb ceilings, which is skeuomorphic already per se because it imitates textiles. So these are the kind of connections that I'm trying to look for. And my database basically includes various information, specifically concerning the visual features of these artifacts, so pigments, intermediate features, and then also, again, the IIIF manifest, image source, and other details. The first thing to do, obviously, is start comparing things in Mirador, which, or again, you can choose probably your favorite viewer. And I was thinking of doing, obviously, annotations, but in my, so to say, optimism, I thought maybe I can first try out with pattern recognition, so to automate this process of recognizing and identifying similar features across different artifacts. And in-house, we have this visual pattern detector, developed by Hussein Mohammed, the digital lab manager of the center. And indeed, the early experiments sort of worked. Even though I do not understand exactly why this ended up being the worst, so this ended up being one of the worst detections because actually it fits perfectly. So obviously you have false positives, but also really good results that end up in the worst detections. It's good as long as they work. But the problem is that I haven't actually yet managed to sort of automate this transposition from the detections in the visual pattern into annotations in Mirador. So this is actually one of the next steps. Integrate Mirador in the digital exhibition, which was actually one of the things that turned out to be the easiest compared to other stuff. And then looking for ways to automate the visual pattern detector annotations in Mirador, even though I'm starting to think that they may not be the best solution because the Marcus, which I will experiment with tomorrow, may solve the problem. So the digital exhibition will be developed in Quire. I've started already. You will be able to look at case studies and access the metadata as well. And if I still have second. I just wanted to say that I am really happy. Yes, exactly. Yeah, basically you will be able to look at the various information, switch between images. So this is again the same motif on a toon ball. You can zoom in. And I don't know why the viewer was so small at the time, and so slow at the time. And obviously this should, it takes forever. But anyway, it's supposed to be a scalable model for comparison with the other written cultures. And if I can switch to the final slide, which, yes. This was just added, so to say, at the last, because I wasn't sure if I would have enough time. But I'm just concluding because basically I'm really happy that the IIIF-4 now supports 3D because I'm using 3D MDS graphs to show connections between various artifacts, and also, so diachronically speaking, and 3D MDS graphs are obviously much better seen in 3D. So that's it for me, and I would really like to hear your thoughts on.
Good evening. By name, I'm called Fredrick Otike from Dedan Kimathi University of Technology, Kenya. 14 years ago, I was in Netherlands at an institute called Royal Tropical Institute. I came here to study about digitalization. The same 14 years, I was in Ghent. It's called Book Tower, when Ghent was partnering with Google in doing digitalization of books. Now I'm here, 14 years later, to share my problems in as far as indigenous knowledge is concerned. And that's why my topic is ethical access for sensitive African collection, lessons from Kenya. Basically, it's said that the world is a book, and those who do not travel only read one page. I think today I'm reading the second page. So basically, Africa, especially Africa in general, we've got approximately 2,000 indigenous languages and cultural traditions. Kenya, we've got 42 languages and cultures. Each indigenous knowledge has its own culture and tradition. So what are we trying to do? It has always been, most institutions, especially in the Western world, some people out of ignorance, they think that African is like one country. But it is not. And all of us have got different cultures and different traditions. And that's why my project is mainly focused on individual cultural tradition within Kenya. So basically, that's where Kenya is in the map of Africa. We are at the equator. We enjoy the best season. We don't have a winter or summer. Every day is summer. So what motivated my research? 3 things were involved. First of all, the research that I did. I did one research, and it's published in, one is at Emerald, the other one is at Taylor and Francis. The first one is harnessing of economic value of indigenous knowledge in Kenya. The second one is LGBTQ books for library shelves, the predicaments of libraries in Africa. Out of this research, I was able to discover a lot of things about the indigenous knowledge, especially in Kenya, that is not documented, because generally, most of the indigenous knowledge in Kenya are orally shared from one generation to the other. And then the other thing that also motivated me is, at my university, we are trying to incorporate museums, that's gallery, libraries, archives, and museums together, because we discovered the access to the library at the moment we're changing the trajectory from the library being just a place where students can just go and study for exams. It's also supposed to be a homely place where you can also come and access other information materials. And then the other motivation is, as I said, most of the African traditions are orally shared from one generation to the other, especially during initiation periods. So, digitalization, why? When digitalization is done, we have got two things that are involved. That is opportunities and risk, especially when oral traditions are recorded and disseminated beyond their original cultural context. Like, for example, at the far end, there's a basket. That basket, we call it kiondo in Kenya. But because it was shared, the Japanese patented it. And right now, we don't have the ownership of that item. That's why, at the moment, the oral tradition, if it's not well disseminated and well curated, we might end up losing our own identity. So, some of the risks that are involved in as far as in digitalization of our indigenous knowledge are sacred cultures places. Like, for example, we've got very many, amongst very many cultural traditions in Kenya. Like, for example, we've got the people called the Mijikenda people. They've got a forest that is sacred, where we believe their God is there. Where we believe their God is there. We also have got Mount Kenya, where the Kikuyus, they believe their God is there. So at times when you digitize some of this information, some of the value of the places might be at risk, either through exploitation. The other issue is colonial era photographic and archives. During the colonization, we discovered that the colonialists, they came and erased most of our history. That is consent and exploitation, colonial framing and harmful metadata, ownership and repatriation, and historical justice and memory. Like, for example, on the far end, there's a gentleman there. To Kenyans, we considered him a hero. We even used to call him Fidel Marshal, Dedan Kimathi. But the colonialists said that he was a criminal because he was fighting the colonialism. So at the moment, as I mentioned, the university where I come from is called Dedan Kimathi University. We have honored him. So the university is named after him, simply because we know exactly the fight that he fought for us to gain independence. So when we digitize some of this information, we're able now to rewrite the history that is not going to be biased. The other issue is community restriction, oral histories. As I said, most of our history is orally transmitted from one generation to the other, mainly through circumcision and initiation, restricted medical and oral histories, sexuality and fertility in instruction. These are normally done from one generation to the other, from one clan to the other. And then warriors' codes and historical accounts of raids and conflicts. So if we decide some of this information, some of the secrets that are involved towards oral histories might be lost. For example, from the farthest point, those are the Maasais. Down here, that is the circumcision. We normally do it amongst this one clan. That's how they do it. And then also this place, during circumcision, the boy who touches the skin of the tail of the cow, they're the ones who are going to be circumcised. So you can be able to know. So it's part of the whole tradition that we are trying to document it. And then the other one, historical marginalized histories. Like, for example, when I was doing my paper about LGBTQ, we discovered that despite the fact that Africans, they say that there's no existence of LGBTQ, it used to be there, but in a different, it's not as it's being portrayed right now. As that's why we're saying that same-sex relationship and gender variance, but these were understood through social roles and customs rather than the modern one, but it used to be there. And then we also have got something that nowadays I think the activists they're always fighting about it. It's called female circumcision, but I think they've changed it to FGM, female genital mutilation. Those are some of the histories, those are some of the culture that we have. But most of it we find we don't have, it's not documented. And that's what this research is focused in achieving, but also ensuring that ethical value is maintained. So what are the implications? These collections raise critical concerns around consent, ownership, representation, and the risk of exploitation, especially when the indigenous knowledge is extracted or shared without appropriate safeguards. And that's what we're trying to do in this research. So what is the way forward? The way forward is that this research seeks to establish appropriate avenues on how indigenous culture knowledge can be leveraged, not only to enhance access, but also to embed ethical protection. And that's why I said most probably if our institution is able to jump into IIIF, then we can be able to know exactly how some of these things can be able to be sought out and are done amicably without interfering with any ethical concerns amongst all the parties. And with that, I say, asante, thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm so glad Fredrick is not the first person talking about the LGBT issue. Now I'm not the first person. So I'm Leo from the Queer Asian Museum. We're physically located in Florida, US, and we have 2 offices in New York and Boston. If you have talked to me, you know my background is a data architect. I was thrown into the museum world 2 years ago when the Beijing LGBT Center got shut down and then sent all their collections and books over to me for safekeep because I used to work for UN and doing project with them. So since 2023, we collect about 2,000 items, and just this year we opened that physical location. It's only 150 square meters. The thing we want to talk about, the theme, is a shrink to civil space and how we should use IIIF is one of the best solutions for us to use. So that is Beijing LGBT Center 2012. When the volunteers worked together, we were a big, happy family, but then 2023, the government finally shut down. Yeah. Like abruptly shut it down like in 2 days. And that requires a solution that has to be really fast. If we want to preserve the things, we don't have trained people, we don't have high-tech people, and the solution has to be fast and before every history got disappeared. And then also, in the same time, we have to be a community-led, bottom-up solution, because in the history, we're intersection either for erased or left in the corner. Like for example, if there's an event, most of the time the Asian or the queer groups will be pushed or canceled at the very end. And we sometimes being told too queer for Asian institutions or too Asian for queer institutions. So like even ourselves, I think we adopt that mentalities, and it's very hard for us to speed up. One of the things me and my colleagues are talking about, our collection is not for visibility, because even we are there, people have access to it, no one gonna look for us. You can see us, but you won't. So we're looking for co-storytellers. We want to increase the audibility. We want to have people interact with us and echo with us. That's why we're collecting. We can inspire people. And what I learned so much in the last 2 days is we can use maps, we can use all those different interactive slow books or whatever that can help us. So yeah, so the third part is it has to be a democratized solution, because the Asian diaspora is so scattered, and we rebuild multiple times, but still, like, Chinese go to Malaysia, go to England, as some friends we just talked to yesterday, or like me, I moved to the US and now come out of my retirement and go back to doing the activist work. And those are a lot of gaps. There's a lot of assumptions. We have to work across different communities. So this is the system we have until last week. I already making a lot of changes. I realized, I think Rowan and Matt told me that we cannot use S3, and we're thinking about put it more. And the map, someone, I think Ronald said we want 3D puzzles. So they started giving me ideas about like gamifications of things. If you're not looking for me, it will make it fun. But what we had before is a GitHub template. Someone can fork it and then just do it that way. And we have a curator and editorial to view it and then put it into our dashboard. And then our volunteer can use Matador to like view it. That was what we had before. But I think after this week, we definitely want to change it to be more interactive with what we learned today. I'm very excited about that all maps thing. I think we can make a queer maps happen. Oh yeah, so I want to emphasize all those things are the reasons, because we can do it very fast. We can have the community just fork a repo and start building with this. So it's done, and it's open standard. It's not holdered by one institution. So even if we're gone, these things is still shared with other people and with all the major museums. A lot of major museums using it. We're very happy to share it with you. And we chose IIIF because for us, it is a survivable solution. It's not, I think someone earlier said it's the infrastructure for operational. That is true, but for us, it's our survival solution for bottom-up community migrated solution. And yeah, so that's our vision. We want to build a decentralized co-storyteller for our archive instead of just like we hosting everything. And right now, Queer Asian Museum, we're in St. Pete, Florida. And then we also help build the Asian Rainbow Choirs they're performing and they're also collecting all the singing materials, because singing tells story. And then we also have volunteers from Singapore, China, and Taiwan to build everything together. Again, I want to thank IIIF for us interoperability. It's a framework of defiance. We use it. It's a very powerful tool for us. And we not just here, but our goal is, actually we already are. We are everywhere. So that's what we're building. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Sebastian Siclait. I'm at the Getty. I'm a software developer there, and I'm going to be talking a little bit today about movies to museums, kind of a bit of a tale of my own path of work arriving at the Getty. So who am I? I'm Sebastian. Software developer working on front-end applications at the Getty. And I've previously worked in both animation and working on tooling for video games as well. On top of a couple other little things of just like a lot of awareness of different 3D sectors, primarily in entertainment technology. So I'm gonna talk today a little bit about some of the highlights of what that is, and why it makes me personally so excited about IIIF 3D, and why immediately hearing about it was so excited to get involved here and hop up on stage. Also me, right here. This is me wearing, if anyone's familiar with the video game God of War, this is me dressed up in Halloween in like high school for, however long ago. As part of my love of 3D is just, I'm someone who's loved video games, love animation. It's just something that I think is really exciting and powerful in a lot of ways, particularly through its storytelling. More 3D. So 3D across industries. So I put here that's subtle but profoundly different. I think something I was surprised by in my experiences was I was expecting for animation and video games to be using 3D in similar ways. I think on the other side of those experiences was not a surprise at all to come to cultural heritage and find that it's very different, because I've already saw in those two slightly similar spaces, they approach it very differently. If you guys are curious, this is The Rock in The Mummy Returns, perhaps an example of bad 3D. So my first experience 3D was working at Walt Disney Animation Studios. I have here an example of, this is behind the scenes on Encanto, if anyone's seen that. The reason I include in here is actually because I feel like it really captures a very specific thing about how 3D is used in animation. It's all about getting the final render. And so the 3D models themselves can often be mashed, broken up, changed for specific use cases. They're not very much designed to be used for an extended period of time. You get to the end of production on a movie and that 3D asset is essentially dead. If you want to bring it back for marketing materials a year down the line, there's a good chance you're going to have to get software engineers to go in there and make manual changes so that it still works in the pipeline, that potentially whatever thing was broken inside of it to make it work for the movie is functional again. And one of the things I particularly saw there was that they were using USD, Unified Scene Description, which is an open source product that came out of Pixar, a lot to improve what their 3D looked like. And that's because this is a framework that really emphasizes collaboration and iterating on assets, not being blocked by parts of a scene being worked on by other artists. It allows for it to all be connected together into one collaborative scene, but also inside of that, really complicated. A lot of performance issues come from that. It's mainly so that you can really get it all together into the same space and reliably know it's there, but not the kind of thing that works super well for the web or anything related to that. And similar to what I was saying, source assets tied to films, they often are ready to go out the door once the movie's done. This is Clay 3D. This is a little GIF of what it was. Rest in peace. This was the company that I co-founded with my brother, that we were working on how we described it as a Figma for 3D design. So if anyone's familiar with Figma, it's a design tool that's web native. It really changed how a lot of software design gets done, because it makes it that much easier for people to engage with it. And there's been a lot of advancements in web graphics that inspired us to work on this project, particularly working with video game studios to help them in their review processes. Particularly, this was going into the pandemic, so seeing how a lot of remote review was something that was an issue there. So as far as it comes to video games, how I found video games was different was video games performance was the most important thing. Where if animation, it was about getting the asset to be ready for a render. In video games, it has to be something that can consistently be used inside of a video game engine. And how it looks and functions in the video game engine is the most important thing among anything else. So even if you're developing inside of Autodesk Maya, or you're doing any sort of additional, compositing and other software, it all comes back to how does it look inside the video game engine. And since a lot of game studios use their own proprietary engines, that can make it particularly hard for anything they make to be interoperable outside of that very specific ecosystem. I included in here 3 logos that I think represent potentially some different approaches on this. Unity and Unreal are 2 game engines which are widely used. They're easily accessible, and I think they've actually marked a good moment of more interoperable assets inside of video games, while FBX, I think, kind of represents the other side of the spectrum, as it's a proprietary tool made by Autodesk that they don't share the specifications for it. And so if you're trying to, but it's very widely used. The problem being, though, is that it's very hard to support and to run through specific pipelines, because a lot of that is done through kind of having to reverse engineer what Autodesk is doing, because they're not going to release it, and who knows if they're ever going to do that. And so there's a lot of the concerns about like what happens to these assets, particularly if they ever stop supporting them. The Getty. So yeah, coming into cultural heritage, this is based on talking with a bunch of people inside of the Getty. We're still very much in this moment of exploring and understanding what can 3D be used for inside of our process. There's been a lot of moments of our imaging team has done some really impressive work as far as trying out different ways of doing these captures for different uses, whether it be through communications, needing it for like a VR experience, or things that maybe get passed on to our shop for merchandise or for like specific projects. But there's not really a centralized process. It's a lot of figuring out how can we best support these things. And if anything, right now, something we're pushing on a little bit more is actually these 360 views, which are kind of like, simulating 3D, but they capture, I think, kind of a little bit of the anxiety of like, if we jump into this, how do we know these will be supported long-term? How will they reach the standards that we currently hold for the visual representations that we produce? So something that we're definitely seeing across these industries are these shared issues of often short-lived assets. They're made for very specific use cases and may not extend beyond that, and super context dependent, which is obviously also very hard for sharing across other places. But wait, a challenger approaches. This is really, I think, part of what got me so excited, I think, hearing about IIIF is just the hearing that, a large part of what IIIF was able to do for images really tackle a lot of these concerns about thinking about how do you make it optimized for access and for interoperability in a way that I think 3D is really struggling with right now, as far as figuring out how can we make that more accessible. And through making it more accessible, make it easier for innovation to happen in more spaces. Because the process of creating these 3D assets is not necessarily always the most accessible. And so if we have a wider network of 3D assets that people can use, they know what it's going to be formatted, how it's going to be formatted, they have some reliability that when they load it into their editor, it's going to look the way they would expect. I think there's a lot of potential for it to see a huge growth there. So in the same vein, shifting towards that reuse, thinking about how do we build then a shared infrastructure and that cross-institutional learning that I think is really accessible once we are able to all see that together. And I think one of the questions I have is like, does this open up digital asset preservation in a way that I think is really lacking? There's so many of these assets that get generated at Disney Animation, and I could see that they have a huge resource library there for all of their 2D animation and all the resource, like all the the backgrounds they generated, all the different cells that they made from those, they all get held on to and put into these libraries there to inspire future generations of artists. But there's no sort of similar approach for their 3D assets right now. When they have to bring any of those things back, it's essentially just building from scratch. So I wonder if there's potential for this to even start pushing towards that. And the final thoughts on this, just to say that not all 3D last. I think there is also an argument to like wonder, like, is that okay as well? Is that something that like, is this about more so like extending that access and then it just expands, pushes these things forward? Honestly, an answer I do not have. But I'm excited about the potential of IIIF, I think, pushing us better towards being able to answer that question with its support for 3D. And that's it.
everybody. I'm Neil Hawkins from Cogapp, and I'm going to talk to you about these lovely things, color calibration charts and their various friends. We work with a lot of different digital collections material at Cogapp, and something we've been hearing more frequently lately is how we can go from things like this on the left to things like this on the right, especially when we don't always know what the thing on the left might be, or it's in a rather large bucket of things on the left. And what are the benefits to doing this kind of thing? So key for us is better user experience on the front end, so we can make sure the artworks are always front and center, and that we've got excellent thumbnails, and we could use those in downstream applications as well. And on the back end, we can use this new metadata for other efficiencies in other workflows. Obviously, prevention is better than the cure in many cases, but if you can't or you haven't done this kind of process during digitization, what might work for a large backlog of potentially unknown examples? So our first attempt at tackling this was in conjunction with ArtUK on one of our hack days, who challenged us to help them improve their crop and review workflow. So we chose to fine-tune an object detection model for this and teach it to identify specific types of charts and rulers and the like. And we spent half the day compiling the data, training the model to detect charts, and then half the day trying to come up with a name for it. Naming things is always hard in programming. Good crop, bad crop, thanks to Andy Cummins for that one. My personal favorite, off the charts, which works on multiple levels if you get that one. Croppy McCropface, of course, someone came up with that. And then a very unfair suggestion. Absolute crop. Anyway, we thought this was a fairly successful outcome and experiment that's got us thinking about how can we actually make this more usable in a more general way. Our first version was locked to a specific provider, which we used to do the prototype very quickly. So we thought, well, it's much better to do this as a small, fast specialist model that could run locally in a web browser, so i.e. anyone could use it anywhere. You're not locked into an API or anything like that. And then, of course, how can we make it interoperable? Well, no prizes to anyone for guessing how we're going to do that. IIIF in, IIIF out, enriching metadata along the way, suitable for onward processing. So we set about fine-tuning this new version of the model. We created a much better data set than we did in the first instance. We have got 600 images in it. We used the original model from the hack day actually to do a significant amount of the labeling for that automatically, which reduced the load significantly. We used the RF Detta architecture, the nano and small sizes, which is an open source architecture from a company called RoboFlow, which is excellent at being fine-tuned on a relatively small number of examples. We then borrowed someone's GPU for about half an hour and $1, thank you to venture capitalists. And then we ran the training scripts and exported it in the Onyx format for the browser, and it was ready to use. And so here is a quick example of the harness that we've built for it. So you can put in IIIF manifest. It will then go through, pick up the charts. You can adjust the confidence threshold for the model, and that will update the suggestions. So these are obviously inferred crops based on the bounding boxes. And you can use the image API to open that as a new image. And then the detections and suggestions for crops can be exported as annotations. And here we're using Clover IIIF. Any Clover fans or users? I just thought I'd mention that because it hasn't been mentioned so far, but it's a great little viewer from Samvera Labs. So going back to the question of cropping, so yeah, detection, that seems to work pretty well and it happens pretty quickly. Apologies to the V&A, I left your citation and credit off this image. But the detection works really well. For cropping, what are some strategies? Well, we can use the basic inference, i.e. where the chart boundaries are not, and then use classical computer vision techniques to tidy that up. Then there are other tricks like segmentation or subject detection, which can also be run in the browser now, although with some difficulty sometimes. And of course, they can lead to more subjective interpretations of the content. And then there's also crazy irregular geometry, which you have to handle in completely different ways. But obviously, these are much more difficult things to decide because you could end up cutting out quite a significant piece of the content. So often better to just flag those we found for review down the line. So that kind of brings us very quickly full circle. The results are, yeah, we think pretty good. It's IIIF in, IIIF out. It's a load, enrich, and export workflow. Obviously, this is running in a browser. You could readapt the model to deploy in other places as a command line tool or similar. It's about 27 megabytes, so very, very portable. And from the inputs, we're generating new outputs, which can make use of the IIIF APIs. So the next steps really are, this is just a start, we think. Small local models have, there's been a few nice examples of their use in the browser. So I think there's definitely got a useful place for those in the IIIF toolkit. Feel free to have a play with it with your own manifests and images. It's not perfect. See the photograph. This was taken outside the place we had dinner on the first evening. It hasn't been trained on any module. But it'd be great to hear from anybody out there who's working with similar issues or questions, so we can talk more about how best to tackle them. So come and find me and let's have a chat. Thank you.
Thank you. So, hello everybody. For those who don't know me, my name is Tristan Roddis, and I don't care about any of your scholarly uses. I only care about fun, and in particular this year, I only care about fun that has some sort of third dimension, or perhaps where that dimension might be, say, the z-axis, or it might be the passage of time. So what I'd like to do is share with you some fun without I. So first of all, apologies. I did have several pre-existing projects that meet the criteria, but there's 14 of them overall. I don't think I've got time to cover them all in the next 4 minutes, 37 seconds. So apologies to these projects. There are still links to them in the slides, which I'll share afterwards. So going on to all new AV and 3D projects. First up, we've got Cozy Reader, created by Trey Pendragon. It looks something like this. Whoa, it's a book. And it's a book you can zoom in on and turn the pages. So top marks for 3D and IIIF. You can load up any manifest and have that projected into the book. I also noticed that Showcase Day, Micro folks demonstrated another page turner, so you can have all your books all the time. Another one, an audio one, this time created by my colleague Steve. Last year, we added several thousand sound recordings to the Endangered Archives Programme website. And a lot of those had digitized photos of the record centres. So we thought it'd be nice to, when you look at the page, if you hold down the letters H, M, and V for his master's voice, then it will start spinning at 33 revolutions per minute, obviously, and play the song for you. So that's that one. Another lovely project from Matt Jordan. So this is taking the photography of Edward Muybridge and animating it based on one of the recipes from the cookbook from Trip Kirkpatrick. And it ends up looking something like this. A whole website with lots of photographic plates. You can search amongst those for things that might be happening, such as galloping. And there we go. On the right-hand side, you've got the original photographic plate with all of the different frames that form the animation. And on the left, we've got that animated through a manifest that, again, associates each of the images with a given time component, resulting in, effectively, a flickbook motion. And what I would say is maybe the All Maps people would like to redigitize the flickbook that they've had, and then they could do exactly the same. Then we got a interesting project, AV Annotate, created at the University of Texas, I believe. This one, it allows you to create an entire website, a narrative website that has embedded text, images, and so on, but crucially allows you to combine those with audio or video and their associated transcripts.
I was born in Del Rio, Texas.
So you can see the
April
transcript on the
28th,
right, it's tagged up. You
1950,
can
but
then skip to different parts in the recording, and that's synchronized with the transcriptions. You can filter then by any of the tags or categorization that you add to this through the editor. And then there's also each page contains an index of all of the transcriptions, which you can then go and see these again on a timeline of the recordings. Then we got a new entry for this year. So there was previously we've had David Newbury's Stereograph Viewer, but that's previous, so sorry, omitted this time. This is a brand new version from Patrick Cuba, and it's a website where, again, you can load up any manifest of your stereographs, and you can animate them. So we've got a few examples here. There's a leopard, and on the right, you can see you can zoom into the image. You can also change speed. You want disco leopard, disco leopard, disco leopard. You get the idea. Then here's one with apologies to Johannes Bater. I saw his excellent Mirador text overlay extension, and I thought, what it needs is karaoke. So here we've got Mirador text overlay. There's a new button top right.
Geehrte Nachricht. 53 erinnert Herr Müller, dass EE auch mikroskopische Wehen genannt werden. Im aber int ist keine Synonyme, denn es gibt Intuitionstiere.
So there you go for all your transcript karaoke needs. Although the source code is available, it's set to just the German voice, so your mileage may vary. Then we've got a chronoscope world being used to view a 2D representation in a 3D environment to find the hidden meaning. So on the right is Holbein's The Ambassador's Portrait, which contains a memento mori. And the only way you can see this memento mori is by effectively skewing the painting and viewing it at a particular angle. So there we got the hidden human skull that I think was originally intended to be viewed from a staircase as you look down upon the painting. Next up, the only entry from the 3D working group, so shame on you. Props to Julie Winchester for providing this. Now there's a QR code if you want to play along. You can scan this in your phone if you want. But otherwise there will be links later. And here's a video of a very nerdy choose your own adventure game for science fiction fans. So here we have, it's the Star Trek Enterprise, viewed through the Smithsonian Voyager viewer. What's going to happen? Well, I mean, as commander, you're going to have to make those choices. You see here, Klingons have appeared. I mean, I better check my instructions and my options. There's only one thing, I just got to ram them. Oh, okay, all right, spoiler, maybe choose better decisions, I don't know. Yeah, you can go and play this one yourself. And that, again, is just using custom 3D manifests linked up all together and displayed using the Voyager viewer. If I can work out how to move to the next slide. I may have just watched this forever. There we go. So the final thing I'd like to show is I was contacted by Alison Sherrick, who pointed out an interesting donut recipe that was found in the Emily Dickinson archive. And she said, what can you do with fun with IIIF with that? And I thought, well, the real problem is I said I'd do 3D or AV, and this, frankly, is a boring 2D image. But then there was the Voyager editor workshop at the online meeting, and I thought, well, what if I just turned it into a donut? Like, that's gratuitous 3D. And this is all well and good, but then I was talking to my colleague Luke, And between us, we thought, what if it could be done for any 2D object with any 3D object? So Luke created this little site here called 3Dify. I'll show you some examples here. So here we've got that same manifest there as an example. Click on the manifest, click on the image from that, and then you've got some pre-created ones. So here's a donut of his creation, and you can see we've mapped the image onto it there. You see the original text, but then you can also crucially download your own GLB file, so you can go and put this in your own 3D manifests. This works with any manifest. So here's an image from the Endangered Archives program that involves a chess tournament. And here from the fixtures, you can see, if I can manage to copy the link address, you can see the ancient chess piece. If I use that GLB, ta-da, I've got that. You can see the color bars are in there, but I believe Neil's got a fix for that or something like that. So that's good. And then finally, the digits of pi mapped on a pi, so that's a pi. And we could also take the digits of pi mapped on a poop and have a poo pi. So all of these things, basically any 2D image, any 3D shape, produce your own, and enjoy. So thank you very much. This is a QR code with the link to the slides that has links to source code for where they're available. The missing project I didn't have time to feature, but please do let me know of any of your other submissions for fun with IIIF, especially the 3D working group. Otherwise, next year might be just fun only with I.
Okay. So we are at 5, and not pointing any fingers, but every single one of the lightning talks was longer than 5 minutes. But I think maybe we'll do 2 questions, and then we'll wrap it up, because I'm sure everyone's extremely thirsty. So they're parched. Ronald's got a question. No.
Okay, so we've had karaoke, we've had 3Dify, we have various archives that are. Can we mash these up in some sort of way to have the best of the ancient, the first one with hieroglyphics and ancient Egypt, we need in 3D cartouche or something. Can we try some mashing up?
Yeah.
Send me the manifest.
We've had enough. Okay. So before I send everyone out, just a couple of things about tomorrow and a couple of things to close. Workshops and Birds of a Feather are tomorrow. If, in case you didn't know, they're in The Hague. So you do need to get on the train. It's about 15 minutes from here. It runs pretty regularly. The meetings are either in the National Archives or in the KB. It is in the program. And I would ask that if you are registered for a workshop and you are not planning to attend, or you decide after tonight that you just can't make it happen, please let us know. Some of them have small numbers of registrants, and we want to make sure that there's people for us to, people in the room for the people who have planned these sessions. Okay, did you catch that? The Hague Central Station? The KB and the National Archives are like directly next to the Central Station. So you can, and they're right across from each other. Okay. I'll ask if everyone can take our survey. It's not too long, and I will send this out to everyone who's registered after if you don't have your phone. But if you want to do it now, it is really helpful, and we do take your feedback into consideration when we're planning the conference. We've made all sorts of decisions about what we're going to offer and how we're going to set up the program based on the things that you let us know. We all good? Okay. Once more, I just want to thank all of the people that make this possible. Our sponsors support this in a huge way. We have made it feasible for us to keep our costs in line over the years. I don't think we've had to raise the cost really in the time I've been here. So first, Kakadu Software, they have been the platinum sponsor. This is the people that make our reception possible, and they've been doing that for years. It was really nice last night, so big thank you to Graham and Kakadu Software for that. The folks from Science have been here not just this week, but also over the last 10 years. They've been a great collaborator, and they were the sponsor of the welcome drinks, which was new and fun. Our scholarship partner, OCLC, they allowed us to bring 3 scholarship recipients to the reception this year. It is hugely impactful. Lots of people who have come as scholarship recipients have stayed engaged in the community and become huge assets. It's a great program, and we're very happy that they support it. Also, and we'll keep going now. Okay. And then I'll go through the rest of our sponsors. Digerati, the crew from Digerati is here. They're a continual sponsor and partner. Cogapp, lots of Cogapp folks just in the last session. From the page, we saw Ben and Sarah earlier in the program, and then also Micrio presenting during our showcase and today. Our bronze sponsor, Digital Scholar, we heard lots about Tropy and Tropify and Omeka and all the things that they do to support us. And then our consortium champions, the Wellcome Collection, Yale, and Stanford, who do tremendous work to support the consortium, its initiatives, and this event. Thanks again to our program committee. It's a lot of people here because we get a lot of submissions, and each submission gets at least 3 people carefully reviewing it and giving their thoughts. I think this was a particularly strong program, and that is in part because of all the people that submitted their presentations and participated, and also because the program committee does such careful, dedicated work planning out the program. So thanks to them. And our local program committee, Bob, Wilbert, Carola, Daphne, Jules, Johannes, and then the whole slew of other people that have supported us on the ground. We had so many locations and 2 more to come tomorrow, and all of those happen with people in those institutions helping us get the room set up, making sure we have Wi-Fi. Do we have enough chairs for everyone? It was a really big effort this year, being all over the Netherlands, and it's because we had so many people helping. And a huge thanks to the Dutch Digital Heritage Network, who were our partners in this and brought staff and money and lots of support and knowledge and guidance. And I think it was successful largely because of their support. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Martin, and then we'll wrap up.
So there's not a lot left. First of all, I also want to add thanks to the staff here at the Sheltema, the AV staff, the hospitality staff. It's been a really fabulous venue, and we couldn't have had a better location for that. Glenn, stand up. We want to thank Glenn for all his technical support behind the scenes, in front of the scenes, and behind the scenes. Caitlin, for which this would not have been possible. Stand up. And again, next year we'll only do 1 city, so it'll be much easier. I also want to thank all of you for coming. You've shared the most precious thing you have, which is your time and your expertise. And without all of you and that time and expertise, the IIIF Consortium couldn't move forward. So again, give yourselves all a big hand of applause, because you actually are what makes IIIF really work. So hoping to see a lot of you tomorrow in Den Haag, and then, of course, a bientôt à Paris. Thank you all. And now we can have our drink.